Look, we know we're jumping the gun on this video because Chris Paul can still technically win an NBA championship, but he's entering his 20th year in the league. He's 39. He's on this young Spurs team, so it feels like any chance he had an NBA championship is officially gone.
I mean, I'm excited to see him play with Wemby, but unless Wemby is Superman, I think you're probably right. And it sucks for him because, I mean, he had chances with the Lob City Clippers and with the Rockets and it just seemed like something would always go wrong for him.
Before we talk about how Chris Paul never won a ring, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any new videos. He starts his career in New Orleans with the Hornets, or kind of started his career in OKC because New Orleans was ravaged by Katrina his rookie season. For most of his first 2 seasons, he's playing home games in OKC before they finally returned to New Orleans. But it's insane how quickly he turned this franchise around. Season prior to getting him, they won 18 games, one of the worst records in the league. His rookie year, they win 38, a 21 improvement. He obviously won Rookie of the Year, and again, it's another scenario. They need to ban these dudes from doing this. Got every single Rookie of the Year first place vote but one, and it was the color commentator for the Jazz who voted for guess who? Darren Williams.
You think there's a conflict of interest there?
Maybe.
You know, it's just like the Raptors announcer who voted for Bargnani instead of Brandon Roy. It's like, dude, come on. Like, I get being a homer, I get supporting your team, but just be objective. It's not very hard. And we were talking like before the recording, didn't Chris Paul orchestrate like a quicker turnaround than like LeBron did with the Cavs? Like that was the only one we could compare it to because LeBron got the Cavs to 50 wins and finished second in MVP voting by his 3rd year. Chris Paul in the Western Conference got the Hornets to 56 wins, by far their most in franchise history, and at age 22 finished second in MVP voting behind Kobe Bryant. He was all NBA first team, all defensive second team, led the NBA in assists, led it in steals. I think he turned around the Hornets just as well as LeBron turned around the Cavs, at least through the first 3 years.
Yeah, like at least through the first 3 years, 100%. Like LeBron won 50 games in the East. This dude won 56 in the West. An incredible season.
And it's not like he was taking over a better situation. Remember, Hornets won 18 games the year before he got there.
Yeah, they just started as a franchise. Hornets beat the Mavericks in 5 in the first round, but they fall to the defending champion Spurs in a tough 7-game series. Unfortunately, though, this was the peak for them. They never got out of the first round again. The following year, they win 7 fewer games, get taken out by the Nuggets in the first round. In 2010, he has a meniscus tear, miss half of the season. They miss the playoffs, and then he comes back. He's looking like himself again, but you fall to the Lakers in the first round, the defending champions again. I mean, it's just tough. They never really surrounded him with that good of a supporting cast. Like, you had David West, who made that one all-star team. You had a young Tyson Chandler.
Peja Stojakovic.
Yeah, Peja was there. Chris Paul dragged a lot of these teams to the playoffs.
Yeah, I just remember very vividly from this era of Chris Paul being in New Orleans. I remember Game 4 against the Mavericks in 2009. It's 2-1, and they're at home, and they lose 121-63 on their home floor. And the thing I remember most about it is like the NBA TV recaps they used to have back in the day. I just remember the commentator saying, this wasn't just bad, this was circus ugly. And I was like, yeah, it was.
During the lockout of the following season, Chris Paul's agent informed the Hornets he would not be re-signing with the team and that he requested a trade. And a little over a week after that, we got the insane news that the Hornets, the Rockets, and the Lakers had agreed on a 3-team deal that would have sent Chris Paul to the Lakers, Pau to the Rockets, and then Lamar Odom, Kevin Martin, Luis Scola, and Goran Dragic to the Hornets. And David Stern, the guy who was known as the Lakers lover, vetoed the trade. One of the more shocking moves by him. He had the right as the owner to do that. And to be fair, that's a pretty ass haul for Chris Paul. So in some sense, it makes sense, but I feel bad for Chris Paul. He could have been paired with Kobe. That's one of the best backcourts in NBA history. And off the top of my head, depending on what they could have done, it might have gone down as the best backcourt ever.
I mean, what a heel turn for David Stern in the eyes of Laker fans, right? You know, you got that infamous quote from the mid-2000s. It's like, oh, David, what's your dream NBA Finals? And he says Lakers versus Lakers. There's just something about him. And then he them over right here. I mean, the package of Lamar Odom, Kevin Martin, Luis Scola, and Goran Dragic, like, it's not great. I think it maybe could have kept the Hornets in the playoffs at the time, but I mean, the package they end up getting, because David Stern's logic for vetoing the trade was he thought they could do better, and when they did send him out to the Clippers, I mean, they got back Eric Gordon, Chris Kaman, and Al-Farouq Aminu. Now, Gordon was a nice young guard. Aminu was also young, had potential. Kaman, I guess, was just coming off an All-Star appearance, I think, for the Clippers.
Somewhat soon, I think like a couple years prior, but yeah.
But, I mean, Odom in his prime, Kevin Martin in his prime, Scola in his prime, Dragic in his prime. Honestly, like, I think that might be the better package. I think the Clippers one is more like forward thinking, but I always just default back to my conspiracy theory that why make one LA team good when you can make both LA teams good? That's what I think happened here.
And now for the Clippers, I think this was the most memorable era for Chris Paul. This was for sure his prime. We have a whole retrospective about this era, so check that out after you've watched this video. And it made sense as a very good fit on paper. You're pairing him with Blake Griffin, one of the best young players in the league, a high flyer, DeAndre Jordan, another dude who could catch lobs, of course, Lob City, the nickname, Randy Foye, Chauncey Billups, Mo Williams. Pretty good supporting cast, and it was the first time for me watching basketball the Clippers were even somewhat relevant.
I mean, they made the playoffs like once in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, they were one of the biggest talking points of the NBA offseason that year. And like, the problem with these Clippers teams, again, we have the whole retrospective on it, they always underperformed, it seemed like, relative to how much talent we all thought they have. Like, his first year there, Chris Paul finishes third in MVP voting behind only Bron and KD. They go 40-26 in the lockout shortened season, their best winning percentage ever at the time, but swept by the Spurs in the second round. Following year, Chris Paul again's an MVP candidate, has another great season, but they're bounced in the first round by Memphis. 2014 leads the NBA in assists and steals. First team All-NBA, first team All-Defense. They win 57 games, but they choke against the Thunder in round 2. 2015 looks like they're going to make the conference finals. You know, you beat the defending champion Spurs in the first round, and then you blow game 6 on your home floor to the Houston Rockets when James Harden was sitting on the bench.
Yeah, Josh Smith and Corey Brewer just cooking on.
And Jason Terry.
God. I mean, it's classic Doc. We knew he was going to choke. It's what he does. And that was the season Chris Paul lost the mantle as the NBA's best point guard. Like, he basically had that from year 2 to this moment. But now Steph Curry was in town, a dude who was a couple hundred miles up north, absolutely balling out, won the MVP this season, won the title.
Crossed Chris Paul out of his shoes,
too. He
too.
did. And then you also had dudes coming up like Russ, Kyrie, Dame, John Wall. They hadn't passed Chris Paul, but they were coming. 2016, he was still an elite player, near the top of his game, got all defensive first team for the 5th straight season, but he had that kind of fluke injury where he broke his hand against the Blazers. Again, you're bounced in the first round. And in 2017, this was really the year the injuries started to creep up. He only plays 61 games, misses the All-Star team for the first time since his rookie season, and the Clippers once again were first round exits, this time to the Jazz. That offseason, he sent out in the sign and trade to the Rockets. And like we mentioned a little bit earlier, like, it's just disappointing. These Clippers teams had so much talent. There were years where it looked like they could have come out the West. Like, they legit could have been the best team in the West, but for one reason or another, they just always fell short.
They were always the best team on 2K.
They were.
Because they always signed, you know, older vets who still had name value, who would be highly rated and were good shooters. You know, your Chauncey Billupses, your Mo Williams, your Josh Smiths, Paul Pierces, but yeah, just never fully clicked on the court.
Now on to the Rockets era. A lot of questions going into this season. You acquire Chris Paul, but you also have James Harden, and the whole thing was two guys who like the basketball in their hands, one basketball on the court. Is it gonna work? But with the help of Mike D'Antoni and a very solid supporting cast, they won 65 games, by far the most Chris Paul had ever won in his career. I think the second highest was the 57 wins with the Clippers.
Sounds right.
Yeah, so he had never been on a 60-win team, but it really wasn't him who got the accolades. Harden was getting all the credit.
Yeah, it's weird. He missed on the All-Star team for a second straight season, which, I mean, being the second best player on a team that won 65 games.
Right.
Has there ever been another team that won that many games that only had a single All-Star?
I don't think so, but again, guards of the West.
Yeah.
Russ, Steph, Dame, Harden. It was tough out there.
You can't find room for Chris Paul in there, though? I mean,
you should have.
You definitely should have. And really, this season is going to be remembered for the conference finals against the Warriors. It looked like Chris Paul was finally going to make it to his first NBA Finals. Rockets went down 2-1, but they proceeded to win the next two games, take a 3-2 lead in this series, heading back to Golden State. Chris Paul was balling out. He hit that shimmy on Steph in Game 5, one of my favorite taunts in sports history. It's brilliant. But at the end of Game 5, hurts his hamstring, misses Game 6 where the Rockets get blown out, and then Game 7 where they obviously missed 27 straight threes and they lose to the Warriors. It's a great NBA what if. What happens if he doesn't get hurt? I think they could have beat the Warriors. I'm not going to definitively say they would have because this was the prime Warriors. They just always seem to pull victories out of their asses. It's what they did, but they definitely would have had a chance. And if they had beaten the Warriors and made the finals, they would have beat the out of LeBron and the Cavs.
Oh yeah. And then the next year, the Rockets just weren't the same team. Chris Paul regressed a little bit. He averaged a career low in points per game, missed the All-Star team again. There were some rumors, which really weren't rumors, that Chris Paul and Harden started to get on each other's nerves. Of course, there was that moment on the bench where they were fighting. There's the video of it. Chris Paul tries to end it. He gives him the fist bump and then Harden just smacks that away.
Maybe that's their secret handshake.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we end recording sessions.
Oh, all the time. After that, they lose to the Warriors again in the second round. This time with KD getting hurt, they still lose because Klay and Steph just balled out in that Game 6. And to me, it kind of felt like Chris Paul's career was going downhill. And I don't want to say he felt washed because he was still a very good player, but it started to feel like we were getting there soon.
It felt like he was going to be washed the next season.
Yeah.
Wherever he ended up going, he was not really going to be able to contribute to winning. He wasn't going to be the best player on a team that could even make the playoffs. And, he got traded to Oklahoma City, and the Thunder were projected to be one of the worst teams in the NBA, one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. I mean, I didn't think they were going to do anything. I was like, oh, Chris Paul's there. They got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He can be, a mentor for him. But this team's winning 25 games, and he proved everybody wrong.
I mean, he leads them to 44 wins, and this is still an NBA shortened season because of the bubble. Once again, he makes the All-Star team, finishes second team All-NBA out of nowhere. A dude who couldn't make the All-Star team a couple years prior, he's now All-NBA second, and he makes the playoffs. He fights the Rockets in that tough 7-game series. They do go down, but this season revitalized his career. Like we said, a lot of people, including ourselves, kind of felt like he was done for, and out of nowhere, he's still the point guard.
And this is a year that the Thunder actively did not want to be good. They were like, oh, we'll just hold on to Chris Paul and we'll flip into a contender for maybe some scraps and we'll go full rebuild, right? And he just dragged him to a playoff appearance out of nowhere.
Yeah, crazy. Following year, he goes to the Suns. This was an up-and-coming Suns team that went 8-0 in the bubble, and he had an incredible season, leads the Suns at 51 wins again in a post-lockdown shortened season. And we've debated a lot of times, Jokic deserved the MVP in my opinion.
This is a hill I will die on.
Oh my God.
Chris Paul deserved to win MVP this season. Did he have the best stats? No. Was he the best player in the NBA? No. But he was the player that was the most valuable to his specific team. Without him, the Suns team is decent, but they're not doing anything. The fact that they went from not even making the playoffs to the NBA Finals, adding this one guy, he meant so much to that Suns team, and we'll talk in a bit how they've plummeted since he left.
The Suns make the finals. Chris Paul finally makes the finals. He balls out in that Game 6 against the Clippers, leads them to the finals, and I really thought he was getting the ring.
I think everyone did.
I mean, you're up 2-0. It's pretty rare a team chokes a 2-0 lead in the NBA Finals. It has happened, but it felt like CP3 was finally going to do it. He was going to have his moment. He was going to win his ring. You couldn't say anything about him. Then you lose the next 4 games.
Okay, to be fair to him, Giannis went berserk.
He did.
Especially in that Game 6. And as good as Chris Paul is, especially on defense, he's not able to guard Giannis. A little bit too short for that. So, unfortunate for him, but just an all-time quote after the finals where he said, now that he had a taste of what the finals was like, he's addicted to it. So, congrats to him on being sober for the past 3 years. It's a journey for all of us, right? Chris. We all need help. We all need support. I'm glad you're making progress on your journey.
In all seriousness, though, I thought the Suns were for sure going back to the NBA Finals. I thought we were getting a rematch, Bucks-Suns again. And I thought the Suns were going to win it the following year because during that regular season, they were the most dominant team in the league, and it wasn't even close. You win 64 games, a franchise record, and keep in mind, Suns have never won a title, but they've had some good teams. 2005, 7 seconds seconds or less, led by Steve Nash. And then you have the 93 Suns, led by Barkley, and you get a franchise record 64 wins. You start out a little bit shaky against the Pelicans, though. They didn't look good, losing 2 games to a 36-win Pelicans team without Zion.
Yeah, not a great start, but, going to the second round against the Mavericks. Series goes chalk to the home team for the first 6 games, so you got a game 7 on your home floor against a lower seed, and you proceed to come out and get absolutely throttled. One of, if not the most embarrassing losses in NBA history. You lose by 33 on your home floor. I'm pretty sure they were down by, 45, maybe even more at that point.
I mean, they were down by 45 at one point because we got the iconic meme. Chris Paul hits a step back 3 to cut the lead to 42.
People have tried to replicate this with other games since then, and it's never been as funny.
No, nothing will maybe ever be as funny as just seeing that image, because credit to the dude who posted that and came up with that idea. One of the funniest moments in NBA history. Following year, the Suns just weren't the same team. I mean, when you lose a game like that, that tends to happen. Chris Paul was older and he had revitalized his career. He had some incredible moments, but this was finally the season where you're like, yeah, Father Time's kind of catching up.
Tapping him on the shoulder.
Yeah, Jay Crowder was pissed off. He just held out the entire season. So kind of, hovered around 500, a little bit above 500. And just when you think they're kind of dead in the water, they get Kevin Durant. They send out Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, and a ton of future firsts. So looks like they have no shot to win the NBA Finals. All of a sudden, now they're one of the teams you got to pay attention to. They go undefeated with KD in the regular season. He only played 8 games, but in those 8 games, they looked very good. You take out a banged up Clippers team in the first round, and then you're back and forth with the Nuggets at first. But then Chris Paul, as he tends to do, gets injured in the playoffs. He gets injured in game 2. You get blown out the final 2 games of the series.
Second straight year.
Yeah. Chris Paul is just unlucky as hell, man.
He is unlucky as hell. And I mean, the next offseason, he's traded to Washington in the Bradley Beal trade, and then he's rerouted to the Warriors when they send Poole out to Washington. Gotta be said, horrible trade for Phoenix. Considering they got back Bradley Beal, who's just a shell of his former self, and considering also the one thing they missed all last year was a point guard. I get Chris Paul's not exactly what he used to be, but they could have used a good point guard last year a lot more than they could have used Bradley Beal.
Hey, they're chilling. They got Tyus Jones now.
Oh, stop the presses then. I'll solve everything. This isn't Duke anymore, okay?
Right. And on that Warriors team, another just amazing quote. Before the season, Draymond says his one goal that season was to get Chris Paul a championship. And they didn't even make the playoffs. They lost to the Kings in the play-in.
Aim high, right?
Right.
Because if you fall short, you land amongst the stars.
Well,
and by land amongst the stars, I mean the 10th seed.
Well, Draymond's still saying, don't count us out. We can still win it, me and Steph. I get it. You got to be egotistical to be him, and that's Draymond's brand.
The Japanese soldier that kept fighting 29 years after World War II.
And at age 38 and now age 39, going to his next season with the Spurs. I mean, it's kind of clear he's not winning that title. Maybe he can do the Udonis Haslem, player coach. He's like, you know what? Wemby's going to be really good one day. If I can just hang around, he's going to win a championship at one point. I don't know if that's his plan or if it's just, one more year racking up assists, adding to that total, throwing lobs to Wemby. But it's pretty clear he's not going to win that ring.
Well, time out. They could win the in-season tournament.
I guess. Do they give out rings for that?
They should.
Okay.
They give out a trophy and they hang a banner.
Yeah, okay.
So why not give out a ring?
So he could get that. But yeah, in terms of an NBA championship, the Larry O'Brien, yeah, he ain't getting that. And really, there was 3 moments to me where he could have won the championship. Maybe 2, but I also want to throw in the Lakers one. I don't think that team would have won the title given, what happened the following year. But Chris Paul and Kobe, Kobe was still very good at that point.
It would have been interesting, but I mean, if they had kept Bynum's knees were going, and if they trade for Dwight had, chronic back, so plus Chris Paul knows a really good chiropractor.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it would have worked for a year or 2, and then I think probably Chris Paul would have had to move on.
It would have been interesting at the very least. And then the other obvious 2 examples, 2018. Man, you can make the argument either way, but I think it's kind of a coin flip who wins that series with the Rockets taking a 3-2 lead. They would have beat the Cavs. He definitely could have won a ring that year. And then 2021, you choke with a 2-0 lead in the finals.
Yeah, 2018 at the very least against the Warriors, Chris Paul would have hit like a couple mid-range jumpers instead of jacking up threes, and he would have like hit Capella or Ariza down low on like a backdoor cut for some layups or something, just to like, you know, stop the bleeding of a Warriors run. And then 21, yeah, they're up 2-0, but unless, you know, Giannis gets arrested for drunk driving or something and is just unable to appear for whatever reason, I'm not sure. If he plays like he played in that 21 finals, I'm not sure the Suns ever have a chance.
Yeah, fair point. It's just sad to see a player as good as Chris Paul never winning a championship and even never winning an MVP. I hope people don't forget about him because the dude was the point god. He's maybe the last just true superstar point guard at least we've seen in the past like 10, 15 years. So I hope his legacy at least never gets forgotten. So why do you guys think Chris Paul didn't win a ring? Was he a choker or did the dude just get super unlucky? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving a like, and hey, while you're here, check out some of our other content as well. And don't forget to subscribe. Synthetic Sports.